Most people enter a new season of life through their conscious mind alone. But real change happens when your conscious mind, your subconscious, and then that spiritual side of you, your intuition, your spirit, when all those layers move together, real change can happen. So join me today as I share how you could enter a new season of life from the inside out. There's a moment that happens right before a new season begins. It can be before the new year, or perhaps before a birthday, or when something in your life changes or transitions in some way, whether it's a marriage, the ending of a relationship, perhaps a new job. There's many ways life chapters can change and bring us into a point of transition. And that moment is usually pretty quiet and it can be subtle, and many of us often miss it as well because something inside of you knows you're standing at a doorway. Energetically, you are moving into something new, and your mind may be dealing with the conscious part of that. But there are other layers of you that can support a transition into a new period of life, and it can truly be transformative. And so, hi, I'm Lori Ingram. I'm a spiritual transformation coach, certified in many things, conscious, subconscious, and superconscious. And I love to pull all those together in creating change because that's how I transform my life. I left a very long career of over 40 years in corporate information technology and transformed into what I do now, which is coaching and other forms of subconscious reprogramming, as well as being a teacher of one of the modalities that really transformed me over 10 years ago. So, most of us were taught that when it comes into a new year or when something changes in our life or we start a new job, the first thing we do is set goals, right? We set goals. We might choose a word. We might create a vision board. We might make a plan. And if that's worked for you, then that's perfect. And if it hasn't quite worked for you, there's nothing wrong either, because those are all things that are important to do. But the reason why those things often don't stick, it's not because you're not disciplined. It's not because you're not motivated. It's because that change may have engaged only one part of who we are. Real sustainable change happens when you are in alignment in all layers of your world. The conscious mind, that thinking part of us, right? The subconscious, which is where our values were developed, which is where our habits come from, which, runs us as an operating system. The vast majority of what we do comes from the subconscious level. And then there's that super conscious, that spiritual layer, that connection to who we truly are, whatever that might mean for you. And when one of those layers is left out, may not be in full alignment. So, what if this season, whenever you're watching this, what about entering a new season for you isn't necessarily about trying harder, but about ensuring that you're bringing all of you fully along for the ride? When I combine those three things for myself, my life changed and actually my business took off, and it all was very natural and totally in alignment across all different parts of myself. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about these different parts that I'm sharing. The conscious mind is where we think, we plan, we do the things, we choose the words, we make the decisions, right? This is what runs us every day. You're consciously sitting here watching this video. Um, but conscious action alone doesn't actually create change, true transformative change. Let's talk about the subconscious. That's where our emotional memory is. That's where our habits live, often formed by things from when we were a child. That's where safety lives, because ultimately your subconscious is always trying to keep you safe. That's its one of its many prime directives, and I think I have a video here that talks about that. It's trying to keep you safe. So, let me just talk about myself for a moment, because I think it might be relatable to some of you. When I was growing up, it was everything from my childhood up until I was a young adult was about getting a job, being self-sustaining, right? Having some marketable skills. They never really felt like what I wanted to do, but I got a job and I started in the IT industry in the early 80s when it was fairly new and I was a young woman and I had great jobs. I was very fortunate. I was not exceptionally great at what I did, but I could do what I did, but it never felt right. It felt like I was going through the motions and I was doing my job and there was always something missing. I never quite knew what it was. And for that reason, I actually spent, a good part of my working life really kind of depressed, very depressed, and really in survival mode. And it wasn't until I realized at a point in my life, probably over 10 years ago now, that I was out of alignment, that I started down this path of changing everything. And it really wasn't until a few years ago where I discovered adding the subconscious part to my work where I really saw a shift in how I was not only living my life, but how I was showing up for clients and sharing all this wisdom of my years and helping others. So it wasn't that I was sabotaging myself. My subconscious was trying to protect myself. It was trying to keep me safe, keep me in what I knew and what I was familiar, and not take risks. That is what the subconscious is. It's there to do for us. So personally, my journey started spiritually. I knew there was something in me calling me to do more. You can call that the superconscious level, the connection to collective consciousness, our spirit, our soul. There's lots of words for that. And it's not something that shouts at us. It's very gentle. It nudges. And I believe it often appears before we even consciously know what it's trying to tell us. And that subconscious can often be protecting us from hearing what our soul wants to say, especially if your soul, like in my case, was like totally changed directions, right? Um, so I worked for many years on my spiritual path. I was trained in modalities that work with other levels of consciousness from a shamanic perspective. I spent 2 years in a seminary program, studied spiritual counseling, was certified in sound healing and all those things that spiritually fed me and helped me on my own path. And then I discovered the subconscious work because even with all that training, I felt like I was still not quite in alignment. And it was because my subconscious was really trying to still keep me safe and not keep me from making videos like this or talking about things that I did. So, one of the frameworks that I use for myself, as well as with clients, both individually and in groups, is something around creating outcomes that are actually achievable. And what makes this work powerful is that it's not the outcome itself, it's the way you bring your subconscious into the process. Because again, you can choose a word, you can create a vision board, you can write out a plan of what you're going to do week by week. That's all great and very needed. But if your subconscious is still trying to keep you safe, still trying to keep you small, worried about what people might say, or that you might fail, that you're not good enough, or that other people are better than you, until you are able to reframe and reprogram that part of you, you're always going to be a bit short of where you want to get to. So, So traditional goal setting is living entirely in your conscious mind because it's logical, it's aspirational, not always connected to what you can support in your body. However, subconscious is going to respond to safety and clarity. So the work of creating achievable outcomes that works on all these different levels actually supports this change because you're working from the inside out. And when I do this in a group, it's not about everybody having the same goal. It's about each person choosing an outcome that they know is achievable, that they have the resources available to them internally to do, that they take radical responsibility and ownership of. That creates momentum. So in this process, there are questions that are asked, and they're not random. They speak, some of them, to the conscious mind. Others are speaking primarily to the subconscious mind. And the thing about working with the subconscious is the subconscious likes speed. The first thing that comes to your mind is typically what you want to go with, because that is your subconscious reacting. And this process is one that I love to facilitate with clients because it's also an embodiment process as well. So, it's a process that takes a while. It takes like a half hour to 45 minutes. But I just want to share with you a few of the questions that I use because they may be helpful to you now if you're at a point where you are making some changes or you're at a change. Maybe you're watching this, around the time of the new year and you're like, next year I'm going to do it, right? Or I'm getting a new job and this time it's going to be the perfect job for me. Or perhaps you're thinking about studying something new or making a change in your life. I mean, these are all questions you can use and allow your subconscious to respond to. So let me just offer a few questions that maybe you can consider. So as you think about the next season of your life that you're entering into, what would feel achievable for you right now without pushing, but absolutely achievable for you? That question alone can cause a great shift. Because when you align the intention of your conscious mind, the safety of your subconscious, and the guidance intuitively, when it all moves together, change starts to feel natural. And for me, in my life, the change I went through was very natural. It wasn't rapid, it took me a few years, but it unfolded in perfect timing, exactly when I needed to do the next step. I was ready, I accepted it, and I owned it, and everything worked together. So if you're interested in a bit more about how to pull these three things together, I invite you to, contact me. I offer a free 30-minute contact call if you'd like to just connect and talk to me about where you are in life. I have some other videos on here, and I also offer periodic workshops as well that you may want to partake in. So be sure you'll see a link below. You can sign up for my email that I send out once or twice a week, and you can join us. So just think about for yourself what might become possible when you stop forcing change and you start moving in alignment with where you want to be. Thank you and be well.